Hi everyone, and we're back, and we now continue our discussion on research ethics. This time we will highlight bioethics. As I mentioned earlier, we said that there are certain ethical standards that we need to follow once we conduct our research work. And most of these standards, in terms of ethical research endeavor, should adhere to the principles of bioethics. So let's define first bioethics. Now, bioethics encompasses concerns about the social, cultural, legal, and ethical implications of such progress. We've highlighted earlier that ethics falls under philosophy. So it also has a social science dimension. Now, looking at the prefix bio, meaning any endeavors in science, life science to be exact, we look at how scientific developments impact our society. Because the impacts of science cannot just be on technological advancements. Most of us would really think, oh, because of this innovation, we were able to make things more efficient, work more efficient, and so on. But these advancements, maybe most of us didn't notice it, but it has cultural and even social implications. And these implications should not be taken for granted. But in a way, as we design now our research methods, we try to integrate these implications so that we can avoid any, let's say, negative effects or negative impacts while we do our experiments. Moving on, there are four bioethics principles that we need to consider every time we do our research work. Now, it includes autonomy, followed by non-maleficence, followed by beneficence, and justice. All these four should be considered in your research. Well, not even us researchers, we follow all these four bioethical principles. And it should not be viewed as a hierarchy because each one has its role, has its main function. So, as much as possible, make it a point that your research work adheres to the four bioethics principles. So that we can really understand each of the principle, we now define and describe them. Now, let's start with autonomy. When you say autonomy, one should respect the right of individuals to make their own decisions. So, basic in all research work that involves human subjects, you need to ask for consent. If your participants are minors, the consent should come from the parents. So, minors can only give their assent or expressing their desire to join your study. But legally speaking, consent should come from the parents. Now, this also means autonomy. If the participant doesn't want to continue with the study anymore, let's say conducting an interview, and there was a question wherein the participant got offended, well, and he expressed his intention not to continue with the questions for the interview, then you should also respect that autonomy given to your participant. So you can end the research work. Now, aside from autonomy, we have non-maleficence. One should avoid causing harm. So when you say harm, not just physical, but even emotional, possible threats that can affect the participants' safety. So even the venue, everything should be regulated, should be checked first before we conduct the experiment, that no harm will really take place as you gather now your data. Aside from non-maleficence, you also have beneficence. So one should take positive steps to help others. How will an individual or how will your participants benefit from your research work? What will they get from your study? Not just the participants, but even for the community, the society. What will be the best impact that your study can really promote? It might be in terms of social interaction. It might be a type of invention that could be used later on, or just simply adding new knowledge. And that's already a big impact to our society. The fourth one is justice. So benefits and risk should be fairly distributed. Now, in the process of asking for consent, we usually provide informed consent letters to our participants. I'm talking about human subjects here. You need to lay down all potential threats, all potential benefits, so that your participant will be very much aware of what to expect in your study. Justice would also mean you don't consider the background of your participants in terms of socioeconomic status, gender. You don't have any bias, even religion. So everyone should feel safe as they join into your research work. And that's how we can promote justice. Now that we have defined all four principles, now I'll be giving you some questions, and this could be used in your discussions in order to ensure that your research work is really ethical. Now, consider them as reflective questions in order for you to assess what to improve and how to arrive at ethically sound research work. To start with, ask your group or ask yourselves, what are the facts involved in the scenario? So who will be indirectly involved or who will be directly affected, aside from you being the researchers, aside from me also being your mentor, your advisor? How will your study now have an impact on me also? The school also to be part of the scenario. So get all the facts involved. How can you really manage to gather all these facts? Well, you also need to factor in Data Privacy Act and all those rules and guidelines that we have. And of course, stakeholders in relation also to the first question. So who will be affected? How will they be affected? How will they react? So look into your stakeholders, not just your participants, but even yourself as a researcher. What is your involvement in conducting that study? Who will be affected by decisions that are made? So after completing your study, perhaps, what will be the impacts? What will be the inputs? How will it be used now? How it will be implemented in terms of finalizing or improving some of our policies, depending also on the nature of your research work. Then what are some ethical questions raised by the situation? So in terms of religious backgrounds, religious perspectives, viewpoints, in terms of sensitive issues that we have in our society. So if you're conducting study about gender, let's say about LGBT, so what about religious views and so on? How can you merge this so that it's not just biased? So that's something that we should also avoid of. Then what are the values that play a role in the decisions? Now, when we say values, I hope that we consider our cultural background, our being Filipino, the values that we uphold. Look also into the values that we uphold as an institution, the Ateneo. So Ateneo Senior High School, we value the 5 C's, not just the 5 C's, but looking at our identity as a Catholic institution, the values set by St. Ignatius and many other things, all this should be factored into your research work. What are the possible solutions to this problem? I know that we have our own biases, and this is something that we need to be aware of. By the way, when you say biases, you go back to your ontological standpoint, okay? So, we don't just we should not be fixated with our own ideas. We might be able to get better ideas from others, from doing the research work, and from identifying all possible solutions. That's the time you can now arrive at the best solution. It's a well thought of solution. It's not just because of your own idea or an individualistic mindset that you provide the solution, but you have exhausted all means in order for you to arrive at the best solution to address now the problem that you're trying to solve. Now, when everything has been said and done, in order to ensure ethical guidelines or having an ethical research work. So just a takeaway, you've heard this line already, and this is very relevant so that we can really ensure ethics in our research work. The end does not justify the means. Just because you have this goal, this intention of being of help to the society, of being a problem solver and somehow address the concerns that we have, you do not, let's say, it's like having that kind of a railroad action, wala sino na masagasaan o anuman, hindi dapat ganon. That's not how research works. We need to value the values that we have as an institution, well, as Filipino citizens, and grounded also by our faith. And that's not wrong. Even though research, you would always associate that with science, science also values cultural aspect, cultural background. So we need to have this kind of narrative that we look at sound ethical actions so that others will also appreciate our work. And it's not just for ourselves because we're doing it for the community. One last before we finally end, and I'd like to emphasize this one. Now, it's our responsibility to be ethical researchers. You might have noticed in the criteria of evaluating or assessing you this quarter, we really put it outright that we wanted the students to uphold ethical guidelines, ethical standards in research work. But I'd like to go beyond research requirement because the idea of ethics or the main concept of ethics, it's not just confined within your academic setting, but even in reality, how you need to deal with people outside, people that you do not know, from different walks of life. With the situations happening right now, our very fiber of morality being challenged, and I hope that we do not really deal with the mob kind of culture. That not because you're outnumbered with what you really believe in, and then you will just join the mob. That's not how we wanted to do things. But at the end of the day, we really need to uphold our values, and this is the very fiber that really creates our society. And if we do not uphold these values, just imagine what kind of generation will be giving now to the young ones, the younger generations that we have. And it's essential that we really uphold these values, not just in research, but even in real life.